My Uncle Arthur toasted me as the family flake at the $50,000 retreat I paid for, so I stood up, smiled, and said, "Cheers to the dumb little game that made this all happen." My dad laughed until I aired Tobias' debts too. They all thought I was still the same screw-up who needed saving. They had no idea what was coming. My name's Maren Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. Hosting a $50,000 family retreat in the Scottish Highlands wasn't exactly how I pictured my summer, but I guess some part of me still wanted their approval. Or maybe I just wanted to see if being the one paying the bills would finally make a difference. It didn't. The welcome dinner was held in a grand old dining room, the kind you see in movies, dark wood everywhere, huge fireplace, giant chandelier throwing golden light across the table. I had arranged everything down to the napkin colors. God forbid anyone notice I wasn't trying hard enough. We were halfway through the main course when Uncle Arthur, my dad's older brother and the designated intellectual of the family, stood up with his wine glass. "A toast," he said, smiling in that slow, smug way of his. I stiffened, setting down my fork. I already knew it wasn't going to be good. "To Maren," Uncle Arthur said, raising his glass. "Who, for years, was the family flake, until we gave her purpose." The words landed like a slap across my face. A few nervous chuckles rippled around the table. My dad actually laughed out loud. My mom stared down at her plate like the salmon was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. My cousins exchanged glances. Expected behavior. That's what it was. Same as always. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. For a second, I almost let it slide. Almost smiled and nodded like a good little disappointment. But not this time. I stood up slowly, glass in hand. My chair scraped loudly against the stone floor. The room quieted. Every eye turned to me. "I'd like to propose a toast too," I said, my voice calm and even. I smiled, the kind of smile that looked friendly if you weren't really paying attention. "To all of you," I said. "To family. To tradition. To prestige." I let the words hang there, just long enough. Then I tipped my glass a little. "And to the mobile game that made all of this possible." A ripple went through the room. I could almost hear the wheels turning in their heads. "I paid for this entire retreat," I said, my tone light. "Every flight, every room, every bottle of wine. All funded by Popstar Ranch, you know, that silly little app one made after dropping out of art school." Silence. I raised my glass a little higher. Cheers. Nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Uncle Arthur's mouth twitched like he was trying to come up with a clever response, but nothing came out. My dad cleared his throat. My mom suddenly found the need to rearrange her silverware. I took a slow sip of wine, savoring the taste. It wasn't even about the money. It was about standing there, unbothered, while they squirmed in the mess they made. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small around them. I felt powerful. And damn, it felt good. The plates clinked and scraped awkwardly as everyone tried to pretend my toast hadn't just cracked the room wide open. I wasn't feeling generous enough to let them recover. I turned to Tobias, my older brother, who was swirling his wine like he was judging its worth. Tobias ran the Carter House Publishing Company, or more accurately, he ran it straight into the ground. But no one ever said that out loud. Not at family dinners. Until now. "So, Tobias," I said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "how's the publishing house doing these days? Still hemorrhaging money?" He stiffened, the wineglass stopping mid-swish. Across the table, Aunt Caroline coughed into her napkin. "We're going through a temporary adjustment period," Tobias said, his voice tight. "It's complicated." I leaned in a little, keeping my voice friendly. "Complicated like unpaid vendors and frozen accounts? Or complicated like personal loans you never mentioned to the board?" His face turned a shade darker. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I said, tilting my head. "I had my lawyer pull the public records. Carter House took a line of credit last quarter just to cover operating costs." A fork clattered onto a plate somewhere down the table. "You think making a video game makes you an expert on business?" Tobias snapped. I shrugged. "I think turning a two-man indie team into a multi-million-dollar studio in under 3 years makes me something." Cecily, my sister, jumped in then, she always did when Tobias got backed into a corner. Marin, let's not do this, she said, smiling too brightly. We're family. We shouldn't be throwing around accusations. I turned to her. You're right. We should be honest instead. Like, maybe you should tell everyone how your arts nonprofit has been on the verge of collapse for 2 years, even after all the emergency donations Mom and Dad magically found for you. Cecily's smile faltered. We're doing important work, she said weakly. Sure you are, I said. And it's real convenient that important work always seems to require family bailouts. The air around the table got thicker, heavier. No one was eating anymore. No one was smiling. You think you're better than us because you made some stupid game, Tobias hissed. No, I said. I think I don't pretend to be better while draining everyone else's resources behind closed doors. Tobias shoved his chair back, the leg screeching against the stone floor. I'm done with this. He stalked out of the dining room, slamming the heavy oak door behind him. The sound echoed off the ancient walls. For a moment, no one moved. I set my wineglass down and looked around the table. Funny, I said quietly, how quick the successful ones are to run when the lights come on. No one answered. They didn't have to. The next morning, the house felt too big. Too quiet. I found myself alone in the solarium, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. Outside, the mist rolled low over the hills. It should have been beautiful. It should have felt like a victory. It didn't. Somewhere upstairs, I could hear muted footsteps, people moving around like ghosts, avoiding each other, avoiding me. My father had passed me in the hallway earlier without a word. My sister gave me a smile so fake it barely stuck to her face. The others didn't even bother. Good, I thought. Let them sit with it. Let them stew. I took a slow sip of coffee, grimacing at the taste. I should have been happy. I had said what needed to be said. I had forced them to look at the mess they pretended didn't exist. And still, there was a small, stupid part of me that ached. Maybe I had come here hoping for more than just an expensive dinner and an awkward standoff. Maybe I thought if I gave them enough, they'd finally see me the way I wanted to be seen. Turns out, you can't buy respect. Not even with $50,000. My phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up, half expecting another passive-aggressive message from my mother. Instead, it was a text from Jamie, my assistant back in Seattle. Jamie, expansion launched last night. Popstar Ranch, Highlands update is #1 worldwide. Congrats, boss. I stared at the screen, blinking. Then, for the first time that morning, I smiled. A real smile. Not the tight, bitter one I wore around my family. I set the phone down gently and leaned back in my chair. The glass walls around me reflected a woman who had built something real. Something none of them could ever take away. And for the first time since I arrived, I let myself wonder, why was I even here? What was I still trying to prove? They weren't the ones who made me. They were just the ones who failed to stop me. Maybe it was time to stop pretending I owed them anything at all. That evening, after dinner, or what passed for dinner, I found a spot by the fire pit outside. The air was cold enough to sting, but I didn't mind. I sat there in one of the big wooden chairs, nursing a mug of tea, watching the flames crackle and spit. I heard the door creak behind me. Heavy footsteps. I knew who it was before he even spoke. Marin, my dad said, clearing his throat. I didn't look up right away. Just stared into the fire, feeling the warmth on my face. Mind if I join you? He asked. I shrugged. Free country. He sat down with a grunt, the chair creaking under him. For a minute, we just sat there in silence, listening to the logs pop. I owe you an apology, he said finally. That got my attention. I turned my head slightly, studying him. His shoulders were slumped, his hands twisted together like he was wringing out a dishcloth. Do you? I said, careful. He nodded. I underestimated you. We all did. I didn't answer. I wasn't here for apologies served cold and half-hearted. He shifted in his seat. Thing is, he said, we're in trouble. Carter House, it's bad. Worse than Tobias admitted. I stayed silent. If we don't come up with a serious turnaround plan, we'll be filing for bankruptcy within the month, he said, voice low. The family name, your grandfather's legacy, it'll be gone. There it was. The real reason he came out here. You want me to save it, I said flatly. He hesitated. I want you to be part of it, he said, softer now. We need your digital expertise. Your connections. Your spark. I let out a dry laugh. Spark, I repeated. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Marin, your grandfather built Carter House from nothing. He was proud of this family. He'd want you to help keep it alive. The gilt card. Right on schedule. I leaned back, feeling the chair dig into my shoulder blades. Funny, I said. When I wanted to join the company years ago, you told me I wasn't a good fit. That I should find something more suitable for my talents. He winced. I didn't let up. And now that you need me, I said, voice steady, suddenly I'm good enough? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I'm not interested, I said quietly. I'm not here to resurrect something that never had a place for me in the first place. He looked at me, something raw in his expression. You'd really just let it die? I thought about it for a second. About all the years of being the joke, the afterthought, the family project no one believed in. Yes, I said. I would. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Slowly, he stood up. For a second, I thought he might say something else. Some last-ditch appeal. But he didn't. He just nodded stiffly, turned, and walked back into the house, back into the wreckage of a legacy he still thought could be saved. I sat there a little longer, letting the fire warm the chill he left behind. The next morning, I found a little pocket of peace in the garden behind the house. It was early, the sun barely over the hills, the air crisp and wet. I sat on a stone bench, sipping a second cup of coffee, trying to pretend none of it mattered anymore. Of course, that's exactly when my mother found me. She approached slowly, holding a delicate teacup like she was starring in a commercial for quiet refinement. I didn't say anything. Just watched her settle beside me, careful not to brush the damp stone with her designer slacks. I was hoping we could talk, she said after a minute, her voice soft. I stayed quiet. She sighed, staring out over the foggy fields. You know, she said, when you were little, we always knew you were special. You had creativity. Fire. I almost laughed. First the guilt trip from Dad, now this fake nostalgia from Mom. They must have been comparing notes. You could have been anything, she said, her voice growing wistful. An architect. A professor. A real artist. There it was. The word she didn't say, but made perfectly clear, real. And yet, she continued, you chose games. She said the word like it tasted sour. I set my coffee cup down, patience thinning fast. I chose something that made me happy, I said. And successful. She smiled gently, like she was humoring a child who didn't know any better. Of course, darling. But imagine what you could have achieved if you'd followed a more respectable path. Respectable. That was always the real currency in this family. I said nothing, letting her fill the silence. You have influence now, she said carefully. Power. People listen to you. She turned to look at me fully, her expression soft but calculating. Which is why, it would be so unfortunate if certain rumors started swirling about your company. I blinked. Rumors? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You know how delicate reputations can be. Especially in industries where ethics are flexible. I leaned back slowly, feeling something cold and solid click into place inside me. So let me get this straight, I said. You're threatening to spread lies about me if I don't help you? She flinched, just barely. I'm saying it would be better for everyone if we were on the same side. I smiled, slow, cold. Go ahead, I said. Start all the rumors you want. I've got lawyers on retainer and millions of fans who'll eat your little gossip for breakfast. Her face paled. I stood up, brushing invisible dirt from my jeans. You still don't get it, I said, looking down at her. I'm not trapped here anymore. I never was. Then I walked away, leaving her sitting there, porcelain cup trembling slightly in her perfect hands. The gala was supposed to be their moment. Their grand showcase. Their last-ditch attempt to polish the Carter family name until it shone like it hadn't already cracked at the seams. I wasn't invited, obviously. Which made showing up even sweeter. I walked into the Marriott ballroom dressed in a sleek black dress, a custom piece from a Stockholm designer I'd partnered with last year. Hair pinned back, heels clicking across the marble floor. Heads turned when I entered. Good. Let them stare. Across the room, I spotted my siblings first. Tobias nearly dropped his drink. Cecily froze mid-conversation. My mother's smile cracked like a mirror the second she saw me. My father, standing stiffly at the podium, locked eyes with me, and for the first time in my life, I watched him genuinely falter. I took my time making my way through the crowd. I shook hands, made small talk. Donors, local politicians, a few minor celebrities. Everyone smiled too wide and leaned in too close, sensing something but not quite sure what. Marin Carter, I said, introducing myself over and over, voice light and casual. Founder of Embersoft Studios. Recognition flickered in their eyes. A few even perked up. Oh, my kids are obsessed with your games, one senator's wife gushed. You're changing the way kids learn. I smiled politely. That's the goal. The family watched from the edge of the room, helpless, trapped by their own need to keep appearances. I could see the panic building behind their stiff faces. Finally, my father stepped up to the microphone. He cleared his throat. Welcome, everyone, he said, voice echoing around the ballroom. Thank you for supporting Carter House Publishing. Tonight, we celebrate tradition, literature, and the future. The crowd applauded politely. He launched into a speech about legacy and prestige. About honor and family. About adapting to a changing world. And just when he reached the part about new partnerships and innovation, I made my move. I stepped forward, heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. Actually, I said, voice carrying effortlessly through the mic, there's one more announcement. The room went dead silent. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I turned to face the crowd, smiling like I owned the place. I'm thrilled to share that Embersoft Studios is partnering with EduNation, the largest educational platform in North America, to gamify literacy for students worldwide. Gasps. Real ones. And we'll be working directly with independent authors and educators to create content, empowering the next generation without the baggage of outdated institutions. I let that one land. The applause started slow. A few claps. Then more. Louder. Louder still. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. I glanced back at my family. My mother looked like she might actually faint. Tobias had gone pale. Cecily gripped her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. My father just stood there. Frozen. I gave him a little smile, a real one this time. Then I turned back to the crowd, soaking in the spotlight they never thought I'd earn. And for the first time, I realized something simple and devastating. I wasn't just successful. I was a threat. 1 year later, I sat in my glass-walled office in Stockholm, sunlight pouring across the hardwood floors. The view stretched out in every direction, the city below, the harbor in the distance, the sky so big it felt like a second ocean. I had built all of this. My studio. My team. My life. Your 2 o'clock is here, my assistant said over the intercom. I closed my laptop and stood, smoothing down the sleeves of my blazer. Send him in, I said. The door opened. And there he was. My father. He looked smaller than I remembered. His once imposing frame hunched. His suit a little looser, a little cheaper. There was no entourage this time. No fake bravado. Just him, standing in front of the daughter he didn't know how to talk to anymore. Marin, he said, voice rough. Thank you for seeing me. I nodded once. Have a seat. He shuffled to the chair across from me, sinking into it like the weight of the past year had finally caught up with him. I sat down too, folding my hands neatly on the desk. He cleared his throat. I won't waste your time, he said. Carter House is gone. We had to file bankruptcy last month. I stayed silent. He looked down at his hands. I tried everything, he said. But it wasn't enough. We weren't enough. There was a long pause. I need help, he said quietly. Anything you can give. Advice. A loan. Anything. I studied him. The lines around his eyes. The way his voice shook slightly. I felt something stir in my chest, not anger. Not triumph. Just sadness. I'm sorry, I said, voice gentle but firm. But I can't help you. He flinched, like he'd expected it, but still hoped for a different answer. This doesn't have to be the end, he said, almost pleading. We're family. I smiled a little. Sad, not cruel. I know, I said. But I stopped living in your world a long time ago. He sat back, like I'd punched the air out of him. I stood up slowly, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city buzzed far below us. Life moving forward, unstoppable. I spent so long trying to be good enough for all of you, I said, not turning around. Trying to buy a seat at a table that was never built for me. I looked over my shoulder at him. But I don't need that table anymore. He stared at me, hollow and tired. Finally, he stood up too. Straightened his suit jacket out of habit. I'm proud of you, he said, so quietly I almost missed it. I nodded once. Take care, Dad. He hesitated at the door, one last look, then left without another word. I turned back to the window, watching him disappear into the crowd below. There was an ache somewhere deep inside me. But no regret. Not this time. I was done chasing ghosts. I had built a new life, one that was mine, all mine. And that was enough.